All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going deep into a company known for really, well, kind of breaking all the rules. Netflix. Now, we're not talking about their shows. We're talking about their company culture, which is a whole other beast. I mean, imagine a workplace where unlimited vacation is just like how they do things.
Really?
Yeah. We're going to be checking out the book No Rules Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention through like a really in-depth review.
Yeah.
So buckle up because we're about to see if this freedom and responsibility thing is like actually genius or maybe a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely sparked some your debate. Some people think it's amazing, some not so much.
Right. And this review doesn't just skim the surface. We're getting into the nitty-gritty. Like they have this thing called the keeper test for employees.
Wow.
And we'll be diving into what a culture of radical honesty actually looks like in action. So to kick things off, maybe you can give us a little more on that whole unlimited vacation thing.
Okay, so yeah, unlimited vacation. It's definitely what people talk about when they hear about Netflix.
Right.
It sounds like a dream come true. But the thing is, it all comes back to this this core idea at Netflix. Freedom and responsibility. They really think, when you trust your employees completely, you get this amazing level of like responsibility back, and that actually fuels innovation.
Okay, so I kind of get that, but I think a lot of us are so used to someone like looking over our shoulder. It's almost like, wouldn't it be tempting to, take advantage if no one was watching?
Yeah, I get it. And that's where that context, not control idea comes in. It's not just a free-for-all. They give their employees a really clear picture of what the company is aiming for, the strategy, the problems. It's almost like they give everyone a map and compass and say, okay, figure out the best way to get there.
So like instead of micromanaging every step, they're empowering people to find their own way. But then how do they make sure everyone is even going in the same direction?
That's the cool part. By providing the context, right, they let employees make their own decisions, but those decisions should still be like in line with what the company is trying to do overall. They're trusting people to think for themselves and contribute.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be super motivating. Instead of feeling like a cog in the machine, you feel like you're actually part of something.
Exactly. It's about ownership and accountability.
Okay, so we've got freedom and responsibility, but now I really want to know about this keeper test thing.
Ah, yes. This is where it gets really interesting. The keeper test is a question Netflix managers ask themselves about each of their employees.
Okay, Dion.
If this person told me they were leaving for a similar job at another company, how hard would I fight to keep them?
Wow, that's pretty direct. I mean, what does that even mean for the employees?
Well, it makes managers really think about like what each person actually brings to the table. It's about figuring out who are those like truly essential people and making sure they feel valued.
Okay, so I see how that could lead to a really strong team, but couldn't it also make people feel a little, I don't know, insecure, like always wondering if they're good enough?
Yeah, that's a good point. And it really highlights how important like good management and communication are. Netflix is all about transparency and feedback, so these conversations about how you're doing happen all the time, not just once a year in a performance review.
Oh, so it's not this big scary thing looming over them, it's just part of the normal conversation.
Right, exactly. They believe in giving people honest feedback, even if it's tough, so that they can constantly learn and improve.
That makes sense. But how do they even find people who can handle this kind of environment? I mean, do they just look for those who love risk and don't need much direction?
Well, it's more than just personality. They look for specific skills, people who can learn fast. Experience is great, of course, but they really emphasize someone's ability to jump right in and contribute.
So are you saying that someone with the right skills, even if they haven't been working for that long, could actually be a better fit than someone with, tons of experience, but maybe not in the exact areas they need?
Exactly. They want the best, regardless of like where they come from or how long they've been doing it.
Yeah.
And they're willing to pay, top salaries to get those people.
Wow, that's quite a strategy. It definitely sounds like a high energy, demanding place to work, but maybe also really rewarding if you thrive on challenge and, constantly learning.
Yeah, you got it. It's definitely not for everyone, but, well, it's working for them.
Yeah, this has been really eye-opening so far. We've talked about freedom and responsibility, touched on the keeper test, and their approach to talent.
And we're just getting started. There's a lot more to uncover about this unique culture.
All right, welcome back. So we've been talking about how Netflix just throws out the rule book and builds this culture around honesty and freedom. It's a lot to take in. But before we get too far, can we go back to that unlimited vacation thing? It's so different from what most of us are used to. I think it needs a little more uh, explaining.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things that really gets people talking. And I get it. It sounds almost, too good to be true. But it all goes back to that idea of freedom and responsibility. That's at the core of how Netflix works.
Right. It's not just like take time off whenever. There's more to it, right?
Totally. For Netflix, it's really about trust. Like they're saying, we trust you to manage your time, your work, and make the best decisions for yourself and the company.
But how does that actually work day to day? Do people abuse it? I mean, does anything actually get done?
It's not a free pass to slack off, not at all.
Yeah.
The expectations are actually really high.
Yeah.
And because they give so much autonomy, there's this strong sense of accountability.
So it's almost like more demanding than having a set number of days because you have to make sure everything's covered, right?
Exactly. You're always balancing your own needs with what the team and the company needs. But Netflix believes that. Like, this kind of environment makes people feel more ownership, more commitment.
I guess it takes a certain kind of person to do well in that kind of setup. Someone who's, I don't know, really organized, driven, comfortable, taking initiative.
And good at communicating. With unlimited vacation, it's even more important to keep everyone in the loop about your schedule and all that. Make sure stuff is covered.
Okay, so unlimited vacation, that's one way they show this freedom and responsibility thing in action. Are there other examples of that?
Yeah, actually, it even applies to how they handle money. Employees have a lot of a surprising amount of freedom when it comes to spending company money. They often don't need all those layers of approval for big purchases.
Whoa, hold on, really? Doesn't that sound like, I don't know, a recipe for disaster? Aren't they worried about people making, like, crazy decisions?
There's always some risk. But again, it comes down to trust and accountability. They hire the right people, give them the information they need,
Yeah.
and they believe those people will make responsible choices.
But how do they keep people from, like, going rogue? There's got to be some kind of safety net, right?
Being transparent is huge for them. Everything spent is tracked, easy to see, and they encourage everyone to, question each other's decisions. They're not afraid to challenge anyone, even higher ups, if they think something's not right for the company.
So it's not blind trust. They have checks and balances, but instead of all that bureaucracy and red tape, it's more about open communication and everyone feeling responsible.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just getting rid of rules for fun. They've built a culture that can actually handle this level of freedom.
It's so interesting to see how this works in different parts of the company, from vacation time to spending. But what about, like, the day-to-day experience? Is everyone at Netflix just super stressed out trying to live up to these, like, crazy expectations?
It's definitely fast-paced, demanding, for sure. But one thing that makes them different is that they really emphasize open and honest feedback.
You mean that radical honesty we talked about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
At Netflix, feedback isn't this once-a-year thing during a performance review. It's constant, this ongoing conversation to help people grow and improve.
So instead of sugarcoating stuff or avoiding tough conversations, they actually encourage people to be direct with each other, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, they believe honesty, even if it's a little harsh sometimes, is way more helpful than, tiptoeing around problems or letting things build up.
It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, but in a work setting. I can see how it could be good, but also pretty intimidating, especially if you're used to those, like, more traditional companies where feedback is all vague and watered down.
It definitely takes a different mindset, both for the person giving feedback and the person receiving it. But Netflix really thinks this directness is essential for creating a culture where people are constantly learning and getting better.
So it's not about just criticizing. It's about using feedback to help people grow and develop.
Exactly. They believe everyone, no matter what their job is or how much experience they have, can benefit from honest feedback. It's how they push each other to be better.
It's fascinating how all these pieces fit together. The freedom, the responsibility, the transparency, that focus on talent. It's a really deliberate way of building a company culture.
And it's definitely working for them. Look at what they've done. They've changed an entire industry. They're this global powerhouse.
So what can the rest of us learn from this unusual way of doing things? Can we use any of these ideas in our own work, even if we don't work at a place like Netflix?
That's the big question, right? And that's what we'll talk about in the last part of our deep dive. Stick around.
All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Netflix and their no rules rules. We've heard a lot about their, unique approach, all that freedom, responsibility, radical honesty. But I think the big question is, like, does it actually work? And can other companies even try to do this, or is it just like a Netflix thing?
Yeah, that's the question everyone wants to know, right? Netflix is doing great, obviously, but no company is perfect. There are definitely some potential downsides and things to watch out for with this kind of approach.
You're right. It all sounds amazing, but I'm sure there are some ways it could go wrong. What are some of those things to like watch out for?
One of the biggest things is burnout. I mean, in a culture where everyone's expected to be high performing, constantly coming up with new ideas, it's easy to feel like you have to work all the time, push yourself too hard.
Yeah, I can see that. Being surrounded by all these like super achievers and that expectation to always go above and beyond, it would be tough to like turn it off and just relax.
Definitely. That's why it's so important to have good support systems, encourage people to take breaks, prioritize their well-being. Netflix knows this is a challenge, and they've been trying to do things to address it. But it's a work in progress, especially in that kind of environment.
And what about the keeper test? I mean, it seems effective for finding the best people, but couldn't it also make people feel like scared or insecure?
Yeah, that's a valid point. If people are always worried about whether they're good enough to be kept, it could get super competitive and actually hurt teamwork. The keeper test only works if it's done right, with lots of open communication and focus on helping people develop.
So it's not just about asking the question, it's about having those real conversations about performance, potential, growth, making sure people feel supported, even if they're not, like hitting every single goal.
Exactly. It's about feedback being a positive thing, not something to be afraid of.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the biggest takeaway you want our listeners to, remember? What have we learned from Netflix that we can use in our own lives, even if we don't work there?
I think the main thing is Netflix's success isn't just about no rules. It's about building a culture that matches their values and what they want to achieve. They've created this system that empowers people, encourages new ideas, rewards high performance, and they've really focused on making an environment where that can actually work.
So it's not about just copying their policies. It's about understanding why they do things that way and figuring out how those ideas could fit into our own situations.
Exactly. Whether it's trying to bring more freedom and responsibility into your work, having more honest conversations, or just being more open to feedback and finding ways to grow, there are a lot of ways to use these lessons in your own life.
This has been a really fascinating look inside Netflix and how they do things. Hopefully you found it informative and got you thinking.
Yeah, and hopefully you got some new ideas to think about as you move forward in your career and try to create a better work experience for yourself.
So until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep pushing those boundaries.